Hi, everybody. Welcome to our channel, our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and I'm here with my co-host.
Janice Gillum Grady. G'day. G'day,
How you doing,
everybody.
Janice?
Hi, Mark. I'm good.
Good,
Hey,
good, good, good.
we're gonna have some fun today. We're gonna laugh about different experiences Claire Headley and I have had raising our children, and also doing a comparison of ourselves being raised in Scientology and in the Sea Org. So this should be a real good fun one. I'm looking forward to it. I've even got little notes on different things to remind me. Oh, I got to bring this up.
Well, without further ado, let me introduce our guest, Claire Headley. How you doing, Claire?
Hello, I'm
Good
good.
to
How are
see
you?
you.
You too. You too. I love you guys. Thank you for having me on.
Oh no,
You're
Always.
welcome.
we're happy to see you. And Mark happened to be in Las Vegas a couple of days ago, and it was great seeing him. We hadn't seen him in person in a while, but right, Janice?
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun seeing Mark. We had some good laughs.
I'm sure
Yeah,
you
and then
did.
we went to he wanted to go, he likes Chinese food, so he wanted me to take him to one of the Chinese restaurants that I recommend here in Las Vegas, and so I did, and
Yeah.
we had a good meal and a lot of
Well,
fun. But then, yeah,
yeah, they got to go to a Chinese restaurant and enjoy each other's company. I had to go to an HOA meeting, and oh, they were so terrible. They were like Nazi dictators. Anyway, I got mad at him, and other people got mad at him, and we'll see what happens.
Nice. Nice
that's
to see
great.
you. Love Food Kitchen. You're very kind. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Anyway, everybody, just to our viewers out there, so we're going to talk about this subject. We are streaming on our channel, our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion, and also on Blown for Good. So you can watch us on either channel. But if you want to watch us on both, that would be great too. We would appreciate that. And of
yes.
course, subscribe to our channels if you would too. It definitely helps and all that. And we want to welcome everybody into the chat. If you have a question, please write the word question, and we'll star them, and we're going to get to the questions after we do our little presentation about parenting. And we just want to make this a fun show, so that's the plan. You got your ladies ready to go?
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely. Let's dive right
Okay.
in.
All right, I wanted to mention, the first thing I wanted to do was, basically, you both were raised in Scientology, born and raised, right, Janice and Claire, right? You were
Yes.
born and raised, right? So your whole upbringing was in Scientology. You didn't, not until you left Scientology. Janice, you were 34 years old, and Claire, how old were you when you left?
I was 30.
30, right. And I
Yes.
left when I was 32. Now, I grew up outside of Scientology, and then when I was 14 got involved. But anyway, you were basically born into it. So we just want to refresh everybody's memory. Here's Janice. How old are you here, Janice, in the Sea Org?
I am 11 years old. This is when we were stranded on the beach in Spain with no passports or money.
And you just recently gone to the Apollo, right? I mean, it wasn't
I'd,
too
I'd only, yeah, I'd only been on the ship for 2 months.
right, right. And then here's Janice at what, 13, walking with L. Ron
Yeah,
Hubbard on the deck of the
uh,
Apollo.
yes, I was about 13. I've been a messenger for a while.
Yeah. And then here's Janice on the flying bridge, right?
Yes, on the flying bridge, reading the compass. I was 12 years old.
Yeah. And here's Janice and her sister Terry. How old were you there, Janice?
13.
Right. And you both were working for L. Ron Hubbard at that point, weren't you?
Yeah, well, this photo was taken while we're in dry dock in Casablanca. So Hubbard was living in a hotel, and we were helping the quartermaster.
Right. And then you basically, just like, well, I'll get to that in just here in a minute. I'll go back to it. Here you are. You're the front right, first row, right, with your saluting.
Yes. Yes, and Annie Broker, Annie Tidman, is front
Mhm.
row on the left, and Sharon
Right.
Stainforth is in the middle, and we were all like 12 years old.
And this is on the flagship Apollo. And
Yes.
then here you are. Who's this, Janice?
This is myself in the middle. I guess I was probably 16 with Annie on my to the right and Claire Popham to the left. All three of us were messengers, and we were in Lisbon at this time.
And then this is my favorite picture of all of your messenger pictures. By the way, we did a whole series and we're still doing it on the story of Hubbard's messengers on our channel. But I love this picture because you all just look like kids having fun.
We
You know what
were.
I mean?
We were.
Teenagers just goofing
Well,
off, and that's what teenagers should be doing.
Yeah, except they shouldn't be hanging over a rail like that.
No,
Why not?
nor should they be in the Sea organization, but that's
That
more
exactly.
fundamental
That's my
comment.
point. Yeah, exactly, Claire.
Good point, Claire. Good point.
But
And
that's
nor should they be living on a ship with no parents.
Exactly.
correct. That's
Yeah.
exactly
Where
right.
do we start on the many fundamental
Out points.
problems with this photo?
Yeah.
Now, on the
yeah.
positive side, that's Annie Broker on the in the front, right, Janice? And then you,
Yeah.
and is that Claire?
Annie Tidman, and then myself, and then Suzette Hubbard, and then behind her is Claire Popham. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, great. And then I wanted to mention, here's of course our guest Claire, right? And then Claire, you grew up in Scientology, and I'm going to share my screen here so everybody can see. And that's you were in the
the front row. Yeah, let's
front
see.
row
Second
to the left,
from the left. Yeah.
in a white sweater.
Yes. Yeah.
And where is this at?
Yeah. So this was at Stonelands in England. I think I was maybe 6, roughly, at this age, and so I was born into Scientology. My mother and father were staff at Manchester Org when I was born. And, I've told the story before about the origin of my name. Claire was from the state of Clear, which is frustrating. In
No
retrospect.
kidding.
Yeah. Anyway,
You
it's all
gotta
right.
live with it.
I know. I choose to, Au Clair de la Lune is one of my favorite pieces that I used to play on the recorder when I was a kid. So I prefer that reference. But nonetheless, so my mother and father got divorced when I was probably 3 because of Scientology. And so that was my first experience with disconnection, because he was completely cut out of my life. To this day, I don't know my father. And so my mother, as a single mom, joined the Sea organization when I was 4 years old, which is when we moved from Manchester to Stonelands here, which is, close to East Grinstead in England. And so there you have it. And the crazy part about this photo is, well, first of all, point to the upper left corner where you see the little baby in a diaper. You see that?
Yeah.
Upper left corner.
Yeah. So up past the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So up there was
Yes.
the nursery, which is where all the babies were. And this group of us here is the cadets. So a cadet in Scientology is where the cadet organization was where children of Sea Org members were prepared and trained and indoctrinated to become members of the Sea organization and prepared for 1 billion years of service. So that's what I'm doing here, is in the cadet organization.
Fabulous. And then, of course, I wanted to bring this back in. And here is you and Mark as teenagers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So this was at my parents' house. We would rarely get to see our parents. Obviously, it was very, very difficult. But this was like 2 hours that we had off work to go visit them on a Christmas day. And I was Mark and I were married. I was 17 and he was 19. So yeah, I was either 17 or 18 in this picture, which is crazy because that's the age of my oldest son right now, is 17. It's just, oh my gosh, so scary.
Yeah, how could that be? Right. Yeah. Well, how did you get involved? Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
That's a great picture of Mark and Claire. It absolutely is.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're doing more than holding hands. You're hugging each other.
Well, we were married already. We had we were official.
Somebody asked, is Mark wearing pleated jeans? LOL, adorable picture.
I didn't notice. Probably, yeah. That picture was 92 or 93.
Right.
Yeah, a long, long time ago.
That's cool. Anyway, so then you left the Sea Org, both of you, and you became mothers. And I'm going to run through some pictures. Here's Janice. Janice is you with your daughter, Erin, right?
Yeah, that actually was at a meeting of ex-Sea Org members in LA.
Wow.
And there is Claire, and that's with Mark in the background, and that's with one of your sons,
Yeah.
correct? Claire?
Yeah, that picture was actually taken by Tampa Bay Times for the article that we participated in called No Kids Allowed.
Okay. And then here's you and Mark with two of your sons.
Yes, that was before number 3 came along.
And then I have all three of them here with you
my
and
little
Mark.
Bubba. Yes.
So
Was
Claire,
that
you have
on one
3
of the
kids?
cruises?
Yes, it was. That was definitely on one of the cruises. Yep.
Yeah, and that's all 3 of your sons there. And then Janice, of course, you have your son John and your daughter Erin.
Yes.
And sorry, taking that down there. Fabulous. Anyway, so I wanted to mention then one other thing. Question. Here's a picture of Janice, right, with Paul,
Yep.
your husband, on the right, and then John and Erin standing there as young children, and that's with your friends Jean and Cheryl Detcheff, right?
Who were in the Sea Org with us, and then they left within a month of us leaving, and lived in Las Vegas for 10 years. And Jean passed away 2 months before Paul did. So
Right.
Cheryl and I now travel together. We went to Greece last year. We did the cruise this year, Florida. So we're making new memories together.
That's amazing. Good job.
Yeah.
So now we're going to get into our discussion. I just wanted to, orient everybody to the fact that both Janice and Claire, you guys grew up in Scientology, but then you became parents after leaving. And what was that like, having your own kids, and what did you learn, and, what mistakes did you make, and all that sort of stuff. So I wanted to start off, I wanted to ask you both, Janice, I know we talked a little bit about this with Sterling last week, but basically, Claire, did you, like when you had your kid, your first child, Janice, you had a silent birth, right? Janice had her first kid on the floor of our apartment in the living room with a midwife. And I was upstairs. We all lived in the same apartment, but Janice was having her baby there. But Claire, I was just wondering what was your experience like when you first had your first kid?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was definitely very not a Scientologist the moment that I left. But my approach has always been to try and learn and embrace just embrace what I don't know and learn. So like, for example, during my pregnancy, I read so many books like What to Expect When You're Expecting and all these other things. It was really helpful. But yeah, no. So the main I had my son in the hospital. It was induced. It was hard as having a child is. The crappy thing was, of course, being already well into suffering through disconnection at that point. Like, the story we always tell from the day that my son was born is, and my son, by the way, was my mom's first grandchild.
Right.
So we called Mark called my mother from the hospital and said, I just want to let you know we're here and Claire's having your first grandchild. Everything's fine. And she's like, I can't talk to you, and hung up. Click. And so,
That's terrible.
I know it was hurtful, but obviously I've learned so much through this journey, and I've just come to realize that there never was unconditional love in Scientology, ever. And so as much as it hurt for me, unfortunately, my parents have made themselves strangers by never having a relationship with my kids. So I kind of, I've learned from that my pain is not necessarily the same. My kids don't know my parents, unfortunately. And so we've always just very had the very strong approach to surround our kids with unconditional love and acceptance, and find a path forward.
Absolutely. Janice, how about you? I mean, what was your experience? Claire, I know you a little bit now since we left the Sea Org. It's like if you don't know, you find out. You read books. You know what I mean? Like, you set up your whole business. You just learned. When Mark wrote his book, you go, I'll figure out how to get it made. You just write the book. So Janice, how about you? I'm not surprised that Claire read how what to do when you're having a kid. Did you do the same thing, Janice?
Well, I was sent a lot of books, and I also went to a Bradley class. Paul and I went to these Bradley classes, and actually that's where I really learned about the female anatomy because I never learned it as a child. We just did reading, writing, arithmetic, and Scientology. So I read a lot on that and learned from going to the class. And so it was a very different thing. But I'd already covered before how my dates were off, and they said I was going to have a retarded child and wanted to do an amniocentesis. So I went through that, mental hell.
Anxiety, yeah.
Yeah. So when I got pregnant with Aaron 3 years later, and I was going back to the same midwife that I had John with, she was like, okay, well, let's do some blood tests. I'm like, no one is messing with my mind like what I went through with John. And I just went through that whole pregnancy with no blood tests because let's just get to the end and see what happens and deal with it. So, yeah, that was a mental hardship.
And they both turned out fantastic.
Oh, they're both great kids. Yeah, you've got some pictures there of what John and his wife look like, and Aaron and my beautiful granddaughter.
Yeah. I'll bring those up here in a second. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, anyway, so I went through that. And, Claire, when I left, I didn't even know where you go for maternity clothes or that there is such a thing, you know?
Totally. Me too. It was like, it was funny when I was having my first son, a friend of ours who was never in Scientology said, oh, you need to have a baby shower. And I was like, what's a baby shower?
Is that like where they wash the kids?
Yeah, I had no idea. I was like, wow, I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, I didn't have a baby shower, but word got around the Scientology field that I was pregnant and having a baby. Because I got a call from Ginny and Jens Bogvart. I got a call from Jill Burkhardt, who was doing auditing of staff at Orange County Org. She was in good standing, and she sent me a whole bunch of baby clothes and baby things. And then a relative of Mark's, Fisher, who knew me on the ship, she sent me a whole bunch of baby stuff. But I never had a baby shower. I didn't know what it was, but I was so thankful for these people giving me all these clothes because we could barely even make rent. It's like we left in August and here I was in April having a baby. Yeah,
no, totally. I know it was terrifying on that level because it was the same for us. Like we were, and so actually speaking of the baby shower, so this friend said, that's it, I'm throwing a baby shower for you. And the night before, Mark was a post-production coordinator / manager at the time. And the night before the baby shower, they shut down that whole department for budget cuts. So we were just like, what do we do now? How's this going to work? Same thing. Like, we had we had been out of the Sea organization for just barely a year. So we left. Obviously, Mark made his escape. I followed him 3 weeks later in January 2005. So this was now January 2006, and our first son was born in February. So, we were very much in the throes of finding our way, building a life, all of that. Very, very hard. And so to have this happen right before I was going to be having my first child was absolutely terrifying.
Right. Yeah. But, it's funny. I remember I needed to take my car in for some repair of some sort. And it was just down the road from where the office was. And I was 8 months pregnant at the time. And when I dropped it off, Paul was there and he drove me to work. Now it's time to go pick it up. So I thought, I'll just walk there. And I'm walking there in the middle of June. It was sweltering hot, and I'm like, why did I do this? And then I get there, and all these guys, the mechanics, are like, oh my God, you should have just called us. You're pregnant. We would have picked you up. And I'm like, wow, I don't have to do things on my own. People are so nice and helpful.
Right? I know, completely. So many amazing people in this world.
Yeah.
Now
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Somebody has a really good question. I'm going to pop it up here right now. This is from Chair Anderson question. What did you ladies do the first time you had to
Oh,
take a sick child to the hospital or give them medicine based on your background in Scientology, which is like, oh, well, you give them a touch assist or, whatever,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. You want to go first, Janice?
I'll go first because I had Paul. Paul was
Okay.
known as the medical officer or the nutritionist or whatever. But we didn't really go. We didn't go to doctors, But one time when John was nearly maybe 2.5, 3, he had a stomach ache. And the daycare, which was like 2 blocks from our office, called and said he's complaining of a stomach ache. He's crying. Something's going on. So we come over and we get him. We're like, okay, I guess we got to go to emergency at the hospital. So we take him to emergency at the hospital, and they do all sorts of tests and stuff like that. And it came down to he was constipated from eating too much cheese. It cost us $3,000. We didn't even have that.
Oh my gosh.
So, I had no idea you can negotiate those bills. So every month I'm sending money or, just trying to pay that along with trying to, still make a living.
Wow.
But yeah, $3,000 for eating too much cheese.
Wow. Yeah. So I have a before and after experience because I have a very vivid memory from my childhood, which was, so my mom left the Sea organization when I was around 9. She took a 1-year leave to have a child. That's kind of a separate story. But the point is that she had my sister when I was 10. And when my sister was about 6 months old, she had a really high fever. Like it was 105 or something like this. And of course, and so my mother was showing me the flag order or the reference from Hubbard about, about fevers. And because she was essentially, my mother was trying to give my sister Tylenol. And I remember I was so traumatized, like, I in my 10-year-old mind just had the idea that she was destroying my sister by even thinking about doing this. And so I was crying, my sister was crying. It was a hot mess. Anyway, obviously it just goes to show the level of indoctrination that I had even at that time in my mind. But anyway, with my own children, obviously from the day my son was born, we were receiving care with a pediatrician. And so anything and everything that happened, I would just go to the pediatrician, and she was amazing. She was just like, by that point I was like, I'm gonna do what, and obviously still researching and learning, reading books and all that, like, the what to expect when you're expecting. There's another book about, for baby to toddlers, everything. So various different parenting books. I would read those all the time.
Right.
I have a similar experience with Tylenol and the fever because, again, I was 32 years old when I left. But, when you're in the Sea organization and you get a fever, you get put in isolation. And basically, they don't give you anything except vitamins and drink liquids and this and that.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the first time I got
tonic.
a fever.
Do you remember the super tonic? Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, anyway, so the first time I got out and I had a fever, and somebody said, "Here, take 2 Tylenol." I said, "Why?" And they said, "It'll get rid of your fever." I took the 2 Tylenol. Oh my God, it was like magic. I was like,
Yes.
where the hell was this whole time?
Well, I'll tell you, my onion is still peeling because just back in September, my knee was killing me, and I was up in Nashville, and it doesn't hurt when I swim. So I was swimming a lot, even in the cold, and Gail's with me. And Gail's like, "Jan, you've got to break down and take an Advil."
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Paul's not here to tell you otherwise. So here's an Advil." She gives me an Advil, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is amazing."
Right.
And you weren't addicted to it or anything like that.
No. But I mean, I grew up, with no aspirin, no Tylenol, no nothing like that, even on the ship or even as I'm raising my own kids, because Paul always had some other solution.
Yeah,
Right.
no, absolutely. Mark and I had his dad, Bernie, who was truly the closest I ever had to a dad. but he was living with us for 5 years while he was battling lung cancer, brain cancer, and all that. And so during that, I learned so much about pain management, breakthrough, all of those things, which was incredibly helpful and really changed my perspective on a lot of things.
Exactly. Let me change the subject. I want to. Oh, go ahead, Janice. You want to say something?
I want to bring up one thing on kids getting hurt playing games and soccer and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I remember sitting there watching a game and a kid gets hurt. The whole game stops. And then the kid gets up and limps off the field and everyone starts clapping. And I'm like, why are they clapping? I just couldn't think with they're clapping because the kid got hurt. No, they were clapping because they walked away.
Yep. I know.
Okay, I want to go to the next subject with regards to your children, right? Janice, I know your kids went to public school, right? Their all the way through high school and everything like that. And Claire, how did you go about educating your kids after being in Scientology? You know, where it was like, an Apple school and things like that. I mean, neither one of you ever graduated high school or anything like that. You just did whatever, basic schooling that they would allow you in Scientology. So, how did you approach your kids, Claire, in regards to getting them educated?
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, and in my case, I actually went to the local elementary school in the years that I was in the cadet organization. So actually, until age 10 or 11, I was receiving an amazing education. Unfortunately, though, and that ironically was because members of the Sea organization couldn't afford to send their children to the Scientology schools in most cases.
Because they were private.
Right, exactly. And super expensive and terrible. And not properly accredited and all that. But for 2 years, from age 10 to, I guess 2.5 years or something like that, so after I graduated from elementary or primary in England is what it's called, I spent close to 3 years at Greenfields, which is the UK equivalent of Delphi, which is completely a Scientology school. And that was just terrible. Anyway, so for my kids, I was like, absolutely, no matter what, a decent, good education is top priority. And so, which sometimes is a struggle, because even our kids know that, they know a lot of our background and story. So when they're having a tough day, they're like, well, why do we have to do this? You guys didn't. And we're like, no, that's not how this works. You're going to power through. We're going to, and it's amazing. My oldest son will be graduating high school in May. So, it's been quite a journey. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So they did public school. Your kids did, right?
Yeah.
In California and Colorado, where you are now. Yeah.
Well,
and
no, that's okay. The year that we moved to Colorado, our oldest son was due to start kindergarten. So that was a huge element and piece of why we made that move. Mark has a lot of family out here that are all amazing. We're never in Scientology. And so, quality of life, available education options were just far better and far more family friendly than what we had seen in Burbank, anyway, so they actually started school here in Colorado. And for the most part, they've been in either our local neighborhood school. There's also amazing charter school options here, which I learned all about. So, yeah. And so my youngest now is in a charter school that's has a classical education approach, and he's doing amazing and loving it. And so, yeah, it's just been, I've so thoroughly enjoyed coming through this process with my kids and kind of seeing them learn and grow, and the contrast is stark.
I'll bet. Now let me ask you this, okay, for both of you, okay? Obviously, having kids in public school, they're there's lots of bad influences and things. We all know it in public schools and also in as kids are growing up. Even when I was growing up, there was potential to get in a rough crowd or a bad crowd or get involved with drugs or things like that. How did you all deal with that with your kids growing up? Did you discuss it with them beforehand? Like, because Scientology was completely anti-drugs. You don't use drugs at all. So but did you have those discussions with your kids as they were growing up?
Yeah, I certainly have, and continue to. And I've always tried to take the approach that, let's talk through things, let's discuss all aspects. And also, I have several times gone to therapy myself. So I've learned the benefits of kind of really being able to self-reflect and learn and grow. And so where needed, I've leaned into that as well in relation to my kids, so that if they are facing struggles, they know that that's completely okay, and we'll help them through that in whatever way we can.
Right.
My dog was barking. My dog was barking.
Yes.
Anyway, how about you,
Yes.
Janice? How did you deal with your kids, and who they were hanging out with, and did they get involved in drugs or stay away from? How did you deal with all that as your kids grew up?
We were pretty lucky because the neighborhood we moved to and the school that was there, 60% of the kids were Mormon, and they have a high family values within the Mormon church, the Latter-day Saints. So by them going to school with them and my son getting involved in sports, he was like the odd man out. Most of the kids on the team were Mormon except for him. And, they would all pray before a game and he'd just sit there and listen. And I remember my daughter actually saying, "Dad, what religion are we?" Because all the kids, most were Mormon. And Dad Paul goes, "Oh, just tell him you're a pagan."
Oh my gosh.
So, Erin would go to school. "Oh, well, I'm a pagan." She had no clue what a pagan was. But,
oh my God. So anyway, and so you basically just steered your kids clear of that. Did your kids feel like they could talk to you about things their problems they were having in school or other kids they were dealing with, bullying, things like that? Did they feel like they had an open enough relationship that they could communicate with you about those things?
For me,
mine.
Go ahead, Janice. Go ahead, Janice. You're good.
I know. I'm hitting you both, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when my son was probably 4 or 5 and he was playing t-ball, there was this one kid that used to run around and jump on the backs of everyone. And I said to my son, if you feel you're being bullied or he jumps on you and you don't like it, you have my permission to get him off you and do whatever you need to. Well, that time happened. And the dad you could tell the dad didn't want anything to do with this little out of control son. So he's out in the field playing t-ball with the kids. The mom is too busy trying to look sexy for all the dads that are there. And this kid comes along, jumps on another kid who's like, "Oh, get off me." And then the kid jumps on my son, John. Next thing I know, my son has got this kid. He's on the ground and John's sitting on top of him. And the mother comes over all upset. And I'm like, "I gave him permission to do that if your son bothered him." And she goes off and she's calling her husband in the field and he's ignoring her. And then he finally comes off the field and he says, "We're going home." Never saw them again. That just handled it.
That's crazy.
But for my son, he was in all the sports, grew up to be 6'3". So at high school, no one messed with him.
Mm-hmm.
He just walked from one class to the other and everyone just kind of, whoa, they just stayed clear of him.
Yeah. My son is 6'2", and pretty much same experience. People have always assumed he's much older than he is because he's always been, like he
large,
had a massive growth spurt. I know Mark and I are like, wow, where did that come from? He's taller than both of us.
Well, when Erin finally went to high school, she was a freshman and John was a senior. Nobody would talk to her.
And
And then as soon as John graduated, all the boys started talking to her. But before that, it was like, no, that's John Grady's sister.
well, let me show everybody John fully grown. Okay, that's John right there with his wife Megan, and you can see he's 6'4" and he's built like you wouldn't believe.
Yep, definitely.
Nobody's messing with John.
No,
like a
no.
brick.
Right. And then Megan, his wife, is also she's in amazing shape, and anyway, they're a great couple. But that's Janice's son John Grady, and then his wife Megan right there, and they're married. And John's 32. I mean, you were pregnant, Janice, with John when you left the Sea Org, right?
Yes, I was. Yep.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Janice. You've come a long way.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
How about Claire? Let me ask you again. Can your kids? Do you feel like your kids can come and talk to you if they're having a problem?
I absolutely do. Obviously it's a continuing journey, and my kids are now 17, 15, and 10.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. So yeah, no, it's been, I've told the story about how when my kids were 2 and like a few months old, how I called Dr. Laura and was just like, what do I tell my kids when they realize that they don't have, grandparents and, like or aunts and uncles. Cause that was a real sore spot for me. Like I just felt the burden of that, like, as my own emotion. Anyway, and that her advice was really helpful, which was to always be honest and tell your kids the truth. And that has been a huge strategy and approach I've taken. I'm very much like, if I make a mistake, I made a mistake, I'm sorry. And I'll learn from that and grow from that. And that's what I can commit to, and we'll find a way forward. And, and I think my kids, they do the same back to me, actually. They're like, obviously we find a path and we find a way, but I know that I always tell my kids, if you're ever having a problem, you come talk to me. You are my number one. You are absolutely, I am here for you. This is my most important job of the many jobs I do. And it was funny because last night Grayson was like, Mom, comes up and gives me a hug. He's like, Mom, I really think you need a break. You have for a while. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to start crying. This kid.
Oh, wow. Now, let me ask you this, Claire, we did a live stream last week with Sterling talking about parenting and kids and growing up with Scientology parents. And Janice mentioned how her parents disciplined them as children with the chit system.
Oh my God.
And we got into the chitty bang bang and chit happens and all that.
That's awesome.
My dad did that, not my mother. She was already in the Sea Org.
Anyway, but I was going to ask you, how did you discipline your kids? Who was the disciplinarian? You or Mark? Did you give them lower conditions?
Oh God,
no. How did you do it? No, I know.
Oh God, no.
But you know what I mean? I mean, it's an important parenting question. It's like, how are you going to discipline your kids when they do something that you don't, they're bad or whatever,
Yeah, no, I have a great example of that. Obviously, I think I'm still, my kids are still growing up. So, we find a path and learn from our mistakes. But I think a really good example that illustrates that is when my kids were, so that my older two were, I think, 12 and 10 or 13 and 11 or something. And they got into it and they were, oh boy, did potty mouth come out. And I got so mad, I was like, that's it. That's enough. I took away any privileges. I'm like, until you show kindness and do something for other people, you're not getting any of those privileges back. And so that weekend we went up to Denver, and there's a beautiful charity that feeds homeless people. And so we all went. I'm like, that's it. You're going to do something good and be kind and show people kindness, just because that's, you taking your life for granted, and you're showing a side of yourself that's not okay. You are brothers, and we're going to work through this. And so that was, to this day, they talk about that, and they were like, that was so good that we did that. And anyway, again,
That's a good point. You know, a lot of parents, you know, well, not a lot of parents, but I mean, it's good to have kids like who you know are middle class or have some sort of privilege or whatever. Help people who are less fortunate
yeah,
to you know teach them about giving and about being helpful to others. Right,
yeah,
right, Claire, right, Janice.
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know, I have a story. I was at a wedding in Florida and it was Mother's Day weekend. And I got a phone call from one of the Mormon moms saying what a great son I had raised. Uh, and I'm like, what's she talking about? So then I call my son to find out. And I find out that he had gotten a call from one of his Mormon friends on the tennis team saying, hey, the Mormon boys are all drinking. Come and help me, you know. So my son grabs his best friend who is Mormon, and they go to the house as all the kids are coming out and getting into cars and they're drunk. So my son, oh my God, I better follow and see where they're going. And so he's following behind, and then he sees one of the drivers doing whip it, which is, I guess, it's the whipped cream can, the gas at the end of it. Every
Oh,
time
yeah.
to stop or something, and one of the other kids is hanging out the window, and they're a bunch of drunks. So my son's trying to find out where are they going. He finally finds out they're going back to their old elementary school to hang out. So my son calls the mother of one of the kids because he had her phone number. He calls, tells her that, hey, these kids are drunk. They go in here. And the mother then calls the parent. And she's like, well, who are all the kids? And he tells her. That mother then calls all the mothers and fathers of the boys that are drunk. And when the parents pull up to the school, there's all these drunk Mormon boys.
Wow.
And one dad's like, my son's not here. And John's like, yeah, in that bush. and, but the mother called me because she was so like, wow, he had the guts to call another parent and report on what the kids were doing. You know, and then she's like, I'll make sure that nobody else knows that he made the call. But somehow it was known he made the call. And girls at the school were coming up and thanking him because he could have saved some lives.
Definitely.
If there'd been any accidents, but he'd gotten them off the road. So anyway, that was a very proud moment for me. And my son, he doesn't drink. And that's his own choice.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was similar to me. My parents, I didn't drink either, you know, and then I got in Scientology when I was 14, but, you know, I didn't drink at all. And, but my parents were really upfront with me about the same thing about if something was, you know, had been done wrong or whatever. My sister got arrested when she was in high school for smoking pot with some friends, right? And I didn't know anything about this at all until my sister had to go to court with my parents, right? And the judge basically let her off, but you know, basically, you know, she got some punishment from the judge, but let her off, right? And I didn't know anything until after the court session. My parents sat me down because I was a young teenager then, and at that point told me what had happened with my sister. And they said, look, you know, we trust you, but we, you know, you never want to be involved in something like this and all that. And it was a good learning lesson for me, and I appreciate my parents doing that for me because I went like, I don't ever want to do that. You know what I mean? It was like not something that I thought was going to be good. And the biggest thing, I mentioned this last week, that for my parents, they didn't ever discipline, like really, like, you know, take away privileges or this and that, right? It was more like the worst thing they could say is, I'm disappointed in you. You know what I mean? That really hurt as a kid. They were disappointed in something that I had done. If I hadn't achieved what I should have achieved and I knew better. Do you know what I mean? And so I thank my parents for that because I've always kept that point of view. And it's really important for parents to, you know, to take an active interest, in my opinion, in their kids, you know, development, growth. And the kids should be able to communicate with their parents.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely did not have that growing up, and it's unfortunately, you know, I'm still coming to terms with it, but I did something a few months ago, participated in something where I, for the first time ever, talked about some early childhood trauma that because of the mechanisms in Scientology, even though I was so young, like starting at 5 or 6 years old, I knew that if I said what had happened, that I would be blamed for it and that I pulled it in and all that. And even in my child's mind on reflection, I realized I knew that would break me as a person completely. And so anyway, again, it's just the process of, as you often say, peeling back the layers of the onion and learning and growing and leaning into the many professional resources, books, all these things that so help to heal and move forward from all that.
Okay, I've got two other
Yeah.
questions here I want to
Yes.
ask, and then we'll get to questions from the audience. We'll get to questions. Okay, first one is, how did you teach your kids? I know what the answer is going to be from Claire, I'm sure. How did you teach your kids the value of money? Do you know what I mean? Like when I was 16, I had to go get a job. That was like, I couldn't, if my parents stopped buying stuff for me when I could go out and get a job, and they made me go get a job. How about you, Janice and Claire? How did you get your kids to respect money and, dealing with work and things like that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question.
Yeah.
For my kids, so obviously Mark and I both have our own small businesses that we've worked very hard to build and grow. And our kids obviously see that. And it's funny when my boys were 14 and 12 on a spring break, they were at the rec center and they saw a person servicing the vending machines, and they came home from that and were like, and told us, Mom, Dad, we've decided we want to start a vending machine business. And anyway, that was an amazing, like, they were very, very successful. And I mean, they ran that for 4 years or three or 4 years. When COVID hit, obviously all vending machines were shut down. So they sold the machines they had and did very, very well. But we would have them go to the bank every week, do the deposits, do the inventory, all of that, which was such, they designed the logos anyway, and they did presentations at the places where they wanted to put the vending machines in. Anyway, it was really fun for Mark and I to kind of realize, like, how much they were paying attention that maybe we didn't quite realize. And obviously now, yes, we're continuing that path. Our older two sons both have jobs, and we're working with them on learning budgeting and finances and all those things
that we didn't know when we left the Sea Org.
Right, exactly. None of that.
What's a mortgage? How do you pay rent?
Yeah, what is a mortgage? I know I didn't know what a mortgage was when I left. I had no idea.
What's a credit card? Oh, you mean I can buy stuff and then, I can pay for it later? Oh yeah, but I can get in trouble doing that too.
Yeah, what's a credit score? Well, we don't have any credit, so we're good, right? That's better than bad credit. No, definitely not.
Go buy a car. You don't have any credit. They're like, we're not going to sell you a car.
Yeah, exactly.
That happened to me. I know it happened to you and Mark.
It did.
It happened to me too. I went to go.
It happened to us.
No credit. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, we just would buy everything cash because we had no credit to qualify for a loan.
Yeah, no, exactly. I know. I've read so many books on credit scores now too. I know more about it than I ever imagined there was to know.
Janice, how about you teaching your kids the value of money?
Yeah. Well, when they were little, we had an office, and so I got a vending machine, and they would come with me and help me buy the stuff for the machine and help me load the Coke and the sodas and the crackers and stuff like that. So I started them off like that as well. And then when John was 11, he became a referee for the toddlers, for the 4 or 5 year old soccer players, because you deal with any of them older. As soon as it gets to offsides, forget it. The parents are like crazy. So John was like, I'll just stick to the games that are not offsides. But he made money doing that as his first job. And Erin at 14, I think she went and got a work permit to be the hostess at a friend of mine's restaurant. And that's how she first had her first job.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay, now the next question's a little bit loaded. I asked this question last week, Janice. How did you teach your kids? How did you teach your kids about the birds and the bees?
Good
Or
question.
did you? Or did they?
You didn't ask. You didn't ask that.
did
You
ask
asked how I learned about it.
That's right, because you were raised in Scientology. So anyway,
Yeah, well, for John, I left that up to Paul, and Erin and I. We had a few discussions, but she also had a lot of girlfriends, and they all talked about it. And actually, I'm driving my daughter, and some other girls home or something, and I heard them all sitting in the back of the car talking about the English teacher who is the assistant coach for the girls volleyball team. And they're talking about the state of his manhood when he walked out onto the court. And I'm like, oh my God. So my neighbor happened to be the principal. So of course I sent my neighbor a note. And then one of the moms who was a security guard comes up to me and says, I've been assigned to keep an eye on the English teacher.
Yeah.
And within weeks he was gone. But so they all talked about it themselves. They knew.
Yeah.
Claire, you had 3 boys. I'm sure Mark probably had something to do with it, right?
Oh, I did too. Mark and I both. I so embrace and appreciate, well, in the context that I never knew my dad, having a mom and a dad role. We obviously have different parenting styles, but we also have, we've had some challenges and we've leaned into those and talked about them, meaning Mark and I, and just like, okay, we got to have united front. We got to work this out and work through this. But yeah, I think we both have had conversations, and I'm just always like, listen, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I want you to know you can talk to me about anything. I'm not trying to embarrass you, because at least for me growing up, it was like, the one time I talked to my mom about, oh, I want to have a boyfriend. She just kind of laughed in my face and told me I was too young, which wasn't helpful.
So
you didn't tell your kids, Janice or Claire, that, oh, if you mess around, you're going to the RPF.
Oh my goodness.
No. But yeah.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Go ahead, Janice. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to bring up a feeling that as someone growing up, I'd never had this feeling until I became a parent. And that's the feeling of pride. And I remember watching my kids, do a performance, my daughter sing, or my son do acrobats or karate or something. And this overwhelming feeling just embraces you. And it's such a feeling of pride watching your children up there, and even tears, coming down that are uncontrollable. And then you're trying to cover it up and make sure no one's watching you. But it's such a feeling I'd never had until I became a parent.
Yes, completely. I know I have that same overwhelming, like just bawling, and I'm like, I'm kind of glancing around. I'm like, I'm having far more of a reaction here, which is okay. I embrace that. And
I'm sure you both appreciate it, because you didn't have that when you were in Scientology.
No.
There was no pride, and there was nobody going like, oh, wow, you're a really good singer or anything like that. It was like, what were your stats this week? What condition are you in? All this other judgmental crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I know. The overwhelming perspective shift for me when I had my own kids was so huge. Like even though I was, out of Scientology, no longer going to have anything further to do with it, still from my perspective, I was trying to protect my mother, like, for example, to her siblings, because, they were like, why won't she talk to you? And I'm like, it's okay. She's doing her thing. I understand. And my aunt one day, who was never in Scientology, very sternly told me, please stop putting your mother on a pedestal. Stop doing that. And I was like, okay. And then when I had my first son, all of a sudden, having that shift of perspective made me reflect on my many experiences growing up. And it was a shock to the system to realize and gain perspective on what actually happened. Anyway, it was transformative for sure.
I'll bet. I'll bet. So now, Claire, I'm going to show some photographs of, your children, meaning Janice's kids. But your son, like you said, he's about to graduate high school. Is that right?
Yes.
And somebody asked, does he have any, plans? Like, is he planning on going to college, or he's going to go into business, or what's his outlook is?
Yes. No, absolutely. Great question. And so for all of our kids, we've always told them, if you want to go to college, we'll support that. We'll figure it out. In the case of my oldest son, he has been working with Mark on Mark's business, installing audiovisual systems for museums since he was about 14. So my my now 17-year-old has, for example, already installed exhibits at the Smithsonian and many other, like Pikes Peak Visitor Center. He loves it. He's really, really good at it. And so that's his current plan. And he'll probably do some further, specialist training at community college. We'll see how it plays out, but he knows he has our full support, and I'm very excited to have my first child graduating high school. I'm going to be a wreck. Let's just face it.
And then Janice, how about your two kids?
Well, my son,
they went to college. John went to college and graduated.
John went to college, yes, and he's a certified nutritionist, and he works for a supplement company. He does the research and development and quality control of their supplements coming off the line. And my daughter, she went to college. She went to performing arts, doing dance and acting, and became a model, and she did well at modeling. And now she has her own little business where, I've mentioned this before, her CBD salve, Oracle. And there's been a lot of people from our subscribers who have purchased the product with great results. So I'm very proud of what she's doing with that. And she's working on coming up with another product to join her CBD salve.
Nice.
Exactly. And that's, if anybody's interested in her website's healingbyoracle.com, right?
Yeah. Healing by Oracle.
Oracle.
Yeah.
.com. Anyway.
Healed.
Well, let me just show Healed by Oracle. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so here's Janice's daughter there on the left and John in the back. And then Janice, these are your nieces and nephews in the middle, right?
Yes. Yes, those are my brother's two boys and his two girls. Now, this picture's taken a long time ago, maybe 7 years ago or something like that. So they're much older now. That little one in the front is like as tall as John. So.
and all of them, that's your brother's kids, right? So they're, your brother was in the Sea Org and Scientology. So yeah, these were all kids that were raised outside of Scientology. And then, of course, we showed you John and his beautiful wife, Megan. And then here's you with your daughter, Erin. And she's got the tall genes too, right, Janice? She's tall.
I'm the short one in the family. Yeah, she's 5'9", 5'9.5", and John's 6'3". So yeah, I'm the short one.
I am too in my family. Two of my boys are now taller than me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then here's Erin with your granddaughter, Elizabeth, right?
Yeah.
How old is Elizabeth now?
We have a lot of fun. Elizabeth's going to be 4 on February 1st.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
So
she's a cutie.
Getting up there. Yeah. She's a lot of fun. She's a smart little cookie.
Of course
she's always a joy. She's very fun to be around. She's always very loving. There she is with your horse, right? Or her
horse.
Right? Her horse.
My sister got that for all the grandnephews and nieces, but she's the only one that's in town, so she gets to ride him the most.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And here's Grandma with Grandma with Elizabeth in the pool.
Yep. Our summer activity. Yeah.
And I wanted to just contrast that real quickly. This is L. Ron Hubbard and Mary Sue Hubbard with their 4 children. And they were held up to all of us as the virtue of a wonderful family, the expert on the second dynamic and all that. But he had a horrible relationship with his kids and his family, and we all know it. We don't need to go into the details here. And then here's L. Ron Hubbard and Mary Sue around 1978. This is a couple years before Mary Sue ended up going to prison because L. Ron Hubbard basically threw her under the bus regarding the Snow White and the infiltration of the U.S. government. And Mary Sue Hubbard stood by her man and took it, and went to prison and never ratted him out or anything like that. And what happened when she got out? Basically, she was disowned and erased from the history of Scientology. They even take her out of the photographs of her and Hubbard. Am I right, Janice?
Yeah, there's photographs where they've photoshopped her out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that shows you what
there's no reason.
Thinks of families. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no reason. It's like it's at a birthday party with a birthday cake. Why would you take the spouse out of the picture?
Right.
It's got nothing to do with Scientology. That's the spouse.
Yeah. And even her name was edited out of so many policies and
references. Oh, and lectures. Yeah.
Yeah, and Hubbard had been married, previous to Mary Sue, was married to two women at the same time. He had kids with his first wife that he didn't pay any child support or take care of for years. Okay, so this is no virtue of families and family life. I just wanted to point that out to people. Yeah. And it's really a testament to the two of you that you've raised such great families and created such a great family life for your children and for your husbands. And so my hat's off to you both. I never got married. I never had kids. So I just wanted to commend you both because you've done such a great job.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, thank you, Mark.
And I always like to recommend Barefaced Messiah by Russell Miller.
Oh, yeah.
The facts in relation to Hubbard are very eye-opening compared to what I believed from the age of 4, just because it's what I was fed and indoctrinated to believe. So,
well, I was around Hubbard for 11 years, pretty much 6 hours a day, every day of the week type of thing. And none of that stuff came up. Yep. It just showed it's like the past was just never talked about.
Right.
And even in his stories and things, I learned a lot of stuff from that book.
Yes.
Yeah. So
and I thought I knew him better than a lot of people.
Right. No, I know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're going to go. We've got some viewer questions here that I'm going to go ahead and pop up here, and we'll just go through them and real quickly here. I want to be an SP. Question: is Boy Scouts anything in the Church of Scientology? Not when I was around. I mean, Hubbard claimed to be the youngest Eagle Scout. That was his claim, in his biography. But I was an Eagle Scout. I was a Boy Scout before I got in Scientology, and I was an Eagle Scout. I got all the way up there. So other than that, there's no other Boy Scouts.
Well, when we were growing up in Australia, my brother was a Boy Scout, and my mother used to take him to Boy Scouts, and we'd go to little shows and things they'd put on. So he did that. And then when we went to England, he did Army Cadets because he wanted to do military. And but he ended up in the SEAL, so that didn't happen. So he never got his acceptance letter. But yeah, he did do Boy Scouts. So it's not a C of S thing, it's an individual family thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I want to be an SP. He asked a similar question about scouting, and he's a longtime scouter. I loved Boy Scouts when I was in there. We went camping. Now, camping to me now is Motel 6. I can't stand being in a tent. I get cold. I don't want it. I want to, I live a little bit more of a bougie lifestyle. So, but I learned a lot of things. I went to summer camp, learned how to canoe, how to row, and all that sort of stuff. So I loved it. And I got all the way up to Eagle Scout. Anyway, go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, well, we used to take our kids camping. Paul was very big on that and teaching them how to put up the tent and how to build the fire, both John and Aaron. And I want to comment too, I want to be an SP. I already sent you your declare. You are an SP. You're no longer I want to be.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for that. All right, we got a super chat here from Britzy74SA. Hey, hi from windy Port Elizabeth, South Africa. Well, hello.
Wow.
Thank you so much for the support. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, next one question here from I think I asked this already. Yeah, I did. Sorry.
Yes. No, you're
We'll go
good.
to the
Yeah.
next one here. Miss Rabbit, gosh, I have PMS. Wouldn't know how to survive without painkillers.
Okay. I never
Janice,
had PM.
Janice, you must have starred this.
I did, because I wanted to mention something. I
Yeah.
didn't have PMS. I had no troubles with that. But one of the other girls' messengers did, and she'd be in a lot of pain. And Hubbard actually had her drinking gin, which kind of surprised me. But he apparently gin helped her with the pain. She didn't take
boy.
Tylenol or anything, but he gave her some gin.
There you go.
I'd
All
love
right.
to hear a doctor's perspective on that.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. We've got another super chat here from ASHO Craft. How does Scientology focus on emotional restraint, like cold chrome steel that Clara's referenced, affect your ability to connect with your kids? How did you teach your kids healthy emotional expression? Good question.
Yes, that's a great question. In terms of how Scientology focused on it, my personal perspective on that is that the thousands of hours of the training drills on communication enforce non-reaction, enforce like patterned response, and dictate how. So and even that ties in with the concept of the emotional tone scale in Scientology, for example, where sympathy is a bad thing and you can't show sympathy or express that to somebody. In terms of how I've taught that to my kids, I've actually leaned into the therapy I've received. And so, like, I'll just give one example that I think illustrates that from my perspective. During a particularly hard time when we were in the midst of our lawsuit and depositions and all this other stuff, it was so hurtful. I really felt that I was, facing Scientology for the first time and really recognizing the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type analogy that exists. And so one day I was driving my kids to preschool and couldn't stop crying. And I realized I was in a crisis and I needed help. And that's where I finally broke and was like, you know what, to hell with it. I've been told therapy is bad my whole life and I can decide, I can find out for myself. So long story to get to the point that, when I was discussing this, I was like, I just don't want my kids to see me upset. And she was like, but why not? It's good for kids to learn that sometimes you have bad days and you will get through that and it's okay. And it was just such a shocking revelation to me. It sounds so basic and simple, but I was like, you're right. I shouldn't be patterning for my kids that, life is wonderful and rosy and everything is easy, and because that's not reality. so
Right.
so I've leaned into that many times and been like, I'm sorry, I'm just having a tough day. And then one day my son, shortly thereafter, was like, Mom, I think Dad's having a bad day. And I'm like, you know what, you're right, but it's gonna be okay. He's gonna be doing better by tomorrow. Anyway, it's always a process and a path, but I think having the ability to learn and grow and reflect is just really, really helpful and important, because we do make mistakes. We're only human, and sometimes we go through rough spots. That's undoubtedly so. And,
Yeah.
from my childhood, I just have layer upon layer of trauma, and I'm working through that on a day-to-day basis. It's a process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great answer, Claire. All right, we'll go to
Thank
the
you.
next question here. Chris asks, question, do you think you are more strict or less strict with your kids compared people that were never in? Is it hard not to spoil your kids trying to give them what you never had?
What an amazing question.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I don't, I think it's just a different approach. I don't think, and it's funny. Sometimes we ask our kids, like, do you think we're being unfair? Because I think it's important to establish a two-way relationship and really work through things. And very often they'll say, no, we made a mistake and that's fair. But yeah, in terms of spoiling them, absolutely. Like, so many times we'll be like, do you know how many iPads we had when we were kids?
Zero.
Zero.
Zero. Do
How
you know
about you, Janice?
how many vacations we went on when we were kids? Zero.
Well, I always felt Paul was harder on the kids than I was. I was the spoiler, because I never got to do so many things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, I did 2 months of grade 7 and that was it. So I had no high school experience. So I spoiled where Paul would, if Aaron had B's, she couldn't go try out for a sport. So, and I disagreed, and there was no talking any sense into him about it. So to be honest, I went behind his back. I would take her for tryouts and get her qualified and selected, because she was a great swimmer. And and I'd flat out lie to Paul. I'd say, because they know she's so good, she automatically made the team. That was a flat out lie. but she, as a freshman, she actually broke the school record as a freshman swimming on the relay team with the seniors.
Wow.
To me, that's a major accomplishment. And if I hadn't done that, she would never have had that experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, and to me, it was like sports are just as important. But what do I know? I didn't go to high school.
Yeah.
But I felt sports was a team activity and it taught you how to deal with other people and social skills. Yeah. So that's what I did, and I have no regrets for it.
Good job, Janice.
Okay, next question here. Vernon Salvatierra. Question, Janice, when your daughter was growing up, did you think of her as an adult in a small body? Did you treat her as an adult? That's a good question.
Okay, here's the trouble with my daughter. She's known everything since she was 5 years old. So no matter what I try no matter what I try to teach her, she already knew. Because I would say, but honey, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, I know. And then it's like, then she sees it's wrong. And it's like, well, I told you. Or she's like, well, nobody told me. And we're like, well, that's because you already knew. But did I treat her as an adult in a small body? No. That was a total. When my kids were 11, because that's the age I went into the Sea Org, I would look at them and I go, what were my parents thinking? Mm-hmm. They're 11 years old. They're the same age I was when I went into the Sea Org and started washing dishes for 200 people and then working for Hubbard as a messenger. And it was like, my parents were proud of me, but I would never do that.
Yes, completely.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. Next question from M. McAleese. Question, do any of you have a different religious belief now, like Christian or Mormon, etc., or do you still identify as a Scientologist? I'll answer first. I have not gotten involved with any religion since I left Scientology. I am spiritual. I do believe that there is a supreme being or spiritual or God or whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous to think that that this all came from nothing. But I don't believe in organized religion anymore after my experiences in Scientology. I mean, as long as a religion does good things and helps people, I'm all for it. Do you know what I mean? But I don't want to be told what I have to do. I gave up that.
It's okay, Mark. We're here.
I gave that up when I went into Scientology. And I'm not giving it back. Sorry. Anyway.
No, don't be sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, but I'm still spiritual and I still treat people the way they should be treated. And I'm a good person. And all. Anyway.
Yeah.
You guys go ahead.
Good.
Good answer,
okay.
Mark.
Clay, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah. No. I am definitely, absolutely not a Scientologist. I am. From the day I left, I was like, yeah. I tell people the moment I had a choice in the matter, I walked away. and so I'm still finding my way. I absolutely consider myself a spiritual person, and similar to what Mark said, it's just a work in progress, and how I've approached that with my kids, because they've definitely seen, they have friends who go to church every week and all that, and we've always just said, yeah, there's many people in this world of many different beliefs, and we just think that should be your choice when you're ready to make a choice as an adult, and we just encourage you to learn all about those things. And like my son wanted to go to youth group at a local church, and that was a real challenge. I had to, I decided, okay, well, I'll go attend a service and learn about the group he wants to attend. And I've told the story before. We were driving there, and I just told him, I'm like, I just want you to know this is just kind of far outside my comfort zone, but it's okay. I know you want to do this. And he was like, don't worry, Mom, I'm not going to sign a contract. I'm like, thank you for understanding that. I really appreciate it. It was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, my daughter grew up with Mormon friends, and when she'd go stay at their house, she would go to church with them. Mm-hmm. And when she was 16 or 16, she wanted to convert to a Mormon. I mean, convert from what? Because we really weren't in anything. I guess from being a pagan.
Oh, God.
And so Paul had a talk with her and basically said, when you're 18, you can make whatever choice you want. Yeah. By the time she hit 18, she didn't want to do it. And then she got into the Course in Miracles, and she says she's found Jesus now. And so she's going down that path. Now, my son, he dated some Mormon girls. And so he went to church with them and decided that wasn't for him. And he also did Course in Miracles, and he's taken a different kind of angle, or he just believes more in himself and being responsible, and I guess that's how he does it. And that's kind of more how I am. I don't follow anything. There are times I do something where I go, well, that's a Scientology thing. And that's all part of peeling the onion, because when you're born into it, you actually don't know what is Scientology and what is something else.
Yeah.
And you've got to discover that on your own. And then being around other parents, you see how they respond to different things, and how would you respond? And you got to evaluate it. And, well, is this me being a Scientologist if I say this, or is this just me being aggressive, or me being right? Or, it's a mixed bag, and you just got to peel away until you find the truth yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, good answer, Janice. I agree with you. Okay, thanks very much for that question. Next question is from KK1. How do Scientologist parents parent their children with disabilities like autism, Down syndromes? Claire, I know you've answered this question before. I mean, they don't really treat them right, do they?
No, they don't, unfortunately. They don't have, they treat people with disabilities, including children, as if they pulled it in. They're degraded beings. I mean, it's just honestly vile.
There is no compassion.
The language, yeah.
There is no compassion in Scientology.
Yeah. So it's, or it's a singular approach to address it using Scientology, when that is broken and dangerous, frankly.
Well, the thoughts are that, if they're deformed or have some sort of disability like that, they're trapped in that body, and it's better if they die and move on to become untrapped. That's the wonkiness of that.
Yeah, it's destructive and dangerous approach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had personal friends. We all know him and his wife, who would not stand for that, and they raised their child who was disabled until he was in his 40s, and who recently passed away, and they would not stand for that. You know what I mean? And they raised and loved that child. Well, you're going to get me started again, because I love Nick Wenlock, but anyway.
Yeah, she got the German measles while in the Sea Organization, and ended up having a child who is deaf, dumb, and blind, and they raised him to his 40s, and he had a good life. They did an incredible job with him.
They really did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway,
amazing
thank you for that
people.
question.
Yeah.
Next question is, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. Office of Spoofed Affairs. Nice job, and without a role model of your own to draw from. Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's a good one. Next question, Mark. Did your dad ever try to talk to your mom about Scientology? Yes, she did before he did me, and she didn't want to have anything to do with it, and they ended up getting divorced. So yeah, he did, and that's all. That's covered in another video that I did about my mom on our channel that you're welcome to watch anytime. That'd be great. Next question is from, Super Chat. Thank you, Emma DeMastery. We appreciate your support. What a wonderful live stream. I work in the early childhood education field, and I so appreciate your perspectives on parenting, important and valuable. Well, thank you, Emma. That's really nice.
Emma. Yes, much appreciated.
Yeah. Next question, Terry Ray. Claire is an inspiration to me that for her parenting. I struggled with it due to a traumatic childhood, alcohol, narcissism, and verbally abusive father.
Thank you, Terry. You're going to make me cry. That's really kind. It's, all we can do is learn and grow and kind of really, personally, I very often self-reflect on my approaches and my thought processes to really, just know that we're always a work in progress, always.
Yeah.
And obviously it becomes just that much more crucial when there's children in the balance, and you really, there's nothing I wouldn't do for my children. And as I said, I've told them so many times they're my number one, and I'm here for them. And even if I'm having a rough day, it's okay. And anyway, there you go.
Great. Thanks, Terry Ray. We appreciate it. Denver Stevo in the house. Hey, Stevo, how you doing? I'm an Eagle Scout myself. I believe the LDS Church is the only religious organization that has adopted the Boy Scouts as an official youth program. Well, that's good information.
Interesting.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Denver Stevo. Next, Miss Rabbit. Mark, how long were you in Scientology? I got in when I was 14 and I left when I was 32. So what's that, 16 years total?
18, but that's okay.
Yeah, 18. Sorry.
It's okay.
I should have known that. I'm getting old.
It's all 18. Good,
The accountant comes out in her.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, thank you so much for that. Next question, Elizabeth H. Was any parents inspired to get a GED while raising their children and helping them with schoolwork? Claire and Janice, did you ever guys get your GEDs or?
I started. I'm working on it. I had to shelve it with a lot of other things but yes, I'm definitely planning on it. I know, despite everything, because I had been working on my GED at various different points. Obviously, I've done so much outside training. I got a realtor license. I got, whatever. I've done.
Yeah, no, you've
hundreds of hours, thousands of hours probably at this point. But nonetheless, I still strongly feel that even as my kids go through the process of getting their high school diploma, that's absolutely on my list to get done for sure. Somebody actually messaged me saying, you know what, you should just at least go do the test, do the practice test. And that was reassuring because I did really well on it. I was like, yeah, okay. I probably have a few holes that I need to fill, but overall I'm in good stead. So I definitely plan to do that.
Well, I'm going to sing both your praises because neither one of you graduated high school, but both of you have been successful business people and highly respected in your fields. Janice had her own mortgage company. Janice was president of the Mortgage Brokers Association of Nevada. She spoke on behalf of the mortgage industry to the United States Senate. And Claire, you have your own business, your bookkeeping business, and all the stuff you've done with Mark. It's just amazing the stuff you all have done, and you never graduated high school. Pretty amazing.
I'm always of the view it's just so important to make your life and take your life where you want it to go. And if you're willing to work hard, it doesn't matter if something was handed to you on a silver platter or not. Definitely wasn't in my case, but nonetheless, you have it in you to create whatever it is you want to create, and
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and to me, even if there's something I don't want to do, I just push myself, and I've got to get out of that comfort zone and just keep pushing myself, because you make no progress unless you push yourself to do things and achieve things.
Yes.
And so I just take that grizzly bear and I just get through it.
Yes, exactly. You can be your own worst critic, or you can choose to be your fiercest advocate, just as a matter of perspective.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Claire, Janice and I were talking last night. We went to dinner. We were talking last night because we're doing a series on the Free Winds, the ship, the Scientology ship. We've had Scott and Carrie Campbell on, right?
Yeah.
And I brought this up when Scott was telling me about. I asked him, "Did you have any experience in an engine room?" No, none whatsoever. Meanwhile, you got these pictures of him dealing with these huge engines, right?
Yeah.
And then Janice talks about the fact that she was in charge of getting the entire ship, the crew, the ship, everything ready for its maiden voyage, right? And I said to Janice last night, I said, wasn't that a little bit overwhelming? And just like what I expected? Or she said, no, it was a job that we had to do. You know what I mean? In other words, one thing, you could say whatever you want that's bad about Scientology, and there's a lot, but boy, they made you confront and handle big jobs. And I think that served a purpose, as we left, where we just barrel ahead and just try and get things done. I just was amazed when I thought about that, Janice, that you'd done that and did this whole thing for a cruise ship,
I grew up.
It's just because I was on the Apollo. You know what I mean? Like as a kid, and I'm going like, whoa, that's still pretty impressive.
I grew up making things go right.
Yeah, there's huge positives and even gianter negatives. I know gianter is not a
absolutely
word.
Yeah. No, I just want to point that out because I mean the stuff that you had to do. I even talked to Mark about that. We had no experience in audio or doing movies, but you learned and you did it. It's pretty amazing. You had no experience doing bookkeeping, but you learned and you did it. Do you know what I mean? It says a lot about you and Mark and Janice and myself as well. Not to toot my own horn, but it's like we just dive in and we just do it.
Yeah. Like I regularly update avionics in an airplane for my boss. Who would have ever thought that I would be doing that? And I love it. I love doing it. It's what an interesting path we take in this life that we live,
Okay, we'll go to the next question here. We got a few more left. Denver Stevo, thank you so much for the super chat, Denver Stevo. As the childless only child of a single parent, my direct experience with children is limited, but from my own life experiences, Claire and Janice always had the instincts to be amazing moms. Thank you so much, Stevo. That's nicely said.
Yeah, so good to see you here, Denver Stevo. Thank you so much. Like I said, it's a work in progress.
I did not have those instincts when I grew up because I was not around kids or anything like that. It was like, oh my God, I've got this child. What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And then my instincts kick in.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, next question here. This is a good one. Miss Rabbit, as people who left a cult, what is your advice for people who disconnect with a dysfunctional family or leave an abusive marriage? I feel the effect is the same.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you, Miss Rabbit. I think it's important to find support and, and just take time to take care of yourself. And I think that's a different path for every person in their respective situations. But certainly for myself, I've just learned the most, I think, from recognizing my own shortcomings and finding resources in the outside world and friends and really leaning into that when I need it the most. Yeah.
Exactly. I have found many of my friends from when I were in who are now out. That's my support group. They're like, whatever I need, they're there. And those are the friends I go to, if I'm going to go to anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they know me. They understand me.
Yes.
Okay, we got two more here.
Awesome.
First one's from Cass Ferns. Question: Is Serge Obolensky still doing well?
Yes, he's doing great, and there's some very promising developments coming. But he had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and he is coming out to visit our family for Christmas that Mark and I are doing for Serge. And my kids are so excited to go Christmas shopping for Serge, and we're going to have a wonderful time. Serge is very excited. I told him, well, let me know what you
that's
want to
great.
do while you're here in Denver. It was so funny because he was like, well, are there any water parks there? I'm like, well, there are, but December is not the best month to go visiting those.
No.
But we'll find some good equivalents for sure.
I'll tell you, Mark told me something funny because it's like 45 degrees here, and we go walking out, and he's got shirt sleeves on. I said, this must be pretty warm for you. He goes, oh yeah, this is nothing. And he said, sometimes I got to stop my kids from going to school in shorts in the snow and make them put on long pants so we don't get reported to Child Protective Services because your kids they don't mind the cold.
They don't at all. No. Colorado kids are just so
Tough.
amazing. And it's funny because there's so many kids that go to school in shorts or flip-flops, even in cold weather. Our kids are not unique in that regard. It's shocking.
I'm a complete wimp. I bundle up and it's 40 degrees,
I'm a wimp.
No, I've adjusted very thoroughly.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, here's the last one I want to bring up here. This is from Shar Anderson. Question: do you know how important you three are? You speak for a lot of people, and a lot of people are listening. Never forget that we hear you. Thank you.
Well, good. Thank you very much.
Yes, and I would say to everybody out there, I did not, when I first got out of Scientology, I was terrified. I was, fearful for what they would do to me. And the bottom line is that so many people, particularly starting with Anonymous, that started speaking out. And I was like, wow, these people who were never in Scientology, they had no reason to come to have, to step into this. And those people, the many people out there that were never in Scientology, you are who inspired me personally to have the courage to do this. So thank you.
Yeah, well said, Claire. And we thank you for all that you do, and same with you, Janice, and all that. And anyway, those are the last of the questions. I just wanted to say we enjoyed, Claire, having you here, of course, as a guest.
Thank you.
You're a good friend, and we love having you.
We should do another one. I've enjoyed talking about this and the laughs, and I think people have as well. They seem to be enjoying it.
Yes, no, parenting is a great topic no matter what, and I'm sure there's many other things that we can talk about. But as always, thank you both for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No, we appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Let me do our business here real quick, okay? Please subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed this live stream. Subscribe both of our channels, Blown for Good and Our Scientology Stories Peeling the Onion. It's not so much for us, okay? It's to get the message out to other people who are never-ends, because what the YouTube algorithm does is it takes popular content and it pushes it out onto other people's homepages that might be interested in it. So don't think that because you're subscribed to us, it's for our benefit. It's for the benefit of what we're trying to do. So please subscribe to our channels if you feel so inclined. Okay. If you have any questions or opinions about anything that we said, you can ask down in the comment section. Janice and I check them all the time. And we will respond. So anyway, if you're interested in doing that, please ask any questions. And if you want to, go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was just going to say, and perhaps we could, if anyone has questions that they would like us to take up in a future parenting series specifically, those would be great.
Thanks, Necessary Trouble. And then I just wanted to say, if you want to donate to our channel, you can buy us a coffee. It's always greatly appreciated. There's a link in the description of the video down below. Is there anything else you guys would like to say? I feel like an auditor at an end of the session. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, just everybody tuning in today. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. I hope you all have a wonderful and restful weekend.
Yes, and then
Very
holidays
good.
right,
Yes.
right here, right around the corner. So anyway,
Yes.
thank you everybody for
Thank you
watching.
for listening.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.